friendship forged in music, a partnership in its fourth decade, a lifetime in pursuit of the perfect song, and a community built along the way. 14 studio albums and another one in the wings. The band is Skydiggers. This is Employee of the Myth, Episode 11, Whatever the Cost. And now, in conversation with Jane Gowan of the Music Buddy podcast, Andy Maize and Josh Finlayson, Skydiggers.
You two, you're masters of macro observations in a lot of your songs, and some of them are political, social. This song, Whatever the Cost, seems to be a personal macro observation, perhaps. Is that true? Is this a personal song?
It's a kind of a stream of consciousness.
Is it?
Yeah, it's a whole bunch of disparate elements, I think, all kind of wedged into one verse after another, followed by a chorus that is not really a chorus, but is based upon something along the lines of "Those were the days, my friend."
Very good. Is that the la 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 part?
Yeah.
That's great. It's such a sing-along part, that part.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't a section where you're trying to find words and couldn't find any. You just heard that in your head, right?
Yeah.
And you haven't played this live yet, but I'm assuming, I'm projecting, I'm hoping that when you do, the whole place is going to sing along to that la 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 part.
Well, that is the idea.
How's your audience forcing along? Do they rise to the occasion?
Always, and we never force. We might gently prod, but we never force anybody to do anything. But there are certainly spots where people like to sing along, and we're always glad to have them aboard.
Do you ever worry that people will interpret your lyrics incorrectly? I mean, I already have done a little bit of that because I'm looking at this song going, is this about settling a score, or is it about someone they know? So do you worry about how your song lyrics will be interpreted?
A little bit, but once you release them, they're not yours anymore. So people can interpret them in whatever way they want, but you hope that you're not misinterpreted in such a way that you create controversy that you never intended to create.
Right.
Like in this song, the first verse, the first and last verse is, about not taking responsibility when responsibility needs to be taken. And once again, kind of ripped from the headlines. We know a certain person who never apologizes and just doubles down on lies and deceit. So that's kind of what that's about. But then there are other things in the lyrics that are, I remember in the classifieds in the back of Now magazine, there used to be, there'd be all sorts of different sexual fantasy ads, and one of them was big-breasted and well-hung. So
that's where that comes from.
That got my attention.
As it would.
It's remained with you.
Yeah, it was just So
was there someone that was both those things at the same time?
I guess so. Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah. So there's that stream of consciousness, and being, I guess, at some point in time, being the belle of the ball, and how it doesn't really, nothing lasts forever. Hopefully everyone gets a turn at being in the limelight, but you're only the new thing once, right?
Right. But you guys have reinvented yourselves many times, would you say? Do you think you've reinvented yourselves over time, or do you think you've stayed pretty much consistent?
I think we've had to reinvent ourselves over the course of time, but I don't think you do that at the expense of not being yourself.
Yeah.
I think they ultimately go hand in, and that's one of the great things about having a partnership, is that you typically, that becomes a bit of the compass too, when you stray too far, away from being what you have been and are, then that's sort of one of the things that helps that.
I think Desmond's Hip City was a reinvention
Yeah.
for us. I think this album, in a way, is a reinvention for us.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
it's
you
not.
said that.
It's still us.
Right.
But I think there are just elements of those recordings where I think we probably went a little further out of our comfort zone than normal.
But we were doing it very much with a kindred spirit in Joby, you know, like Joby, you know, aesthetically, I think Joby really intuitively understood us and helped us and helped the process a lot. And because of COVID, it was just the three of us for the most part, you know, with the exception of Daniel, and Daniel was the only one that came into the studio.
Right.
But you know, he's a terrific producer and musician, and is, you know, he's just very intuitive. If we had made this record with the band, you know, and they're a great band, it would have been it would have been a very different record. Maybe better, maybe not. It doesn't matter. I mean, this is what we did, and I think this was. I think maybe to Andy's point, it's different because Joby really made us feel comfortable, and I think ultimately sort of allowed us to sort of go further down roads that maybe we wouldn't have done in other situations.
So you feel like it was kind of a leap of faith that you took together?
Yeah, and just because we're working quickly, it was easy to do that, and he
Right.
was interpreting stuff, and he would question stuff and offer alternatives, and I can play it this way, I can play it, what do you think? And sometimes those are hard decisions to make.
Yeah.
You know,
Especially on the spot.
committing to them. Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes we'd start and we'd go down a road, and then it was like, you know what, maybe this is the wrong way. And so,
Yeah.
but it was easy. He was so great at then going back and just cleaning the slate and trying something else. And that was good. That was a nice thing. It's sometimes that's hard to do with a full band and in a studio. Just the communication, because it requires interpretation from everyone, and then sometimes that becomes a bit, can get bogged down. But sometimes it's great too, you know.
Do you find it easier, though, now that you're the age you are and you've made so many albums together? Is it easier to kind of let go the reins a little bit and let go maybe of some opinions you would have held very strongly in your earlier days as artists?
Yeah, for sure. For me, for sure. I mean, you know, I remember early days of recording, you know, particularly, you know, Ronnie and I would argue about who knows, and it doesn't even matter now, but I do remember we used to argue about stuff because we both held such strong opinions, which is also what you know, when something is as important to you as these recordings were to us, you know, it's the passion.
I care more than you do.
But the passion is great.
Yeah.
The passion is great, but you know, the passion now is more in the kind of performance of what you want to do, and I learned it at some point, and you know, I'm a slow learner, Jane. It takes me a long time to figure some of this stuff out, but I realize that, you know, that there are different ways of doing things, and my way isn't always the best way. So shut up, Maize, and just wait until you get to the end of an idea.
Can you tell the Santa Claus Parade trumpet story? You know, that's such a great story.
Oh, well,
This should be on tape.
Our high school band would play in the Santa Claus Parade, and I played trumpet in the band. And we had a great music teacher, Bob Kruger, who was he was a great guy, gone way too soon. But you know, we'd go down on a school bus. The staging area was at Christie and Bloor, and you know, we'd get to the school bus. And we'd go down, and everyone's excited. We're wearing our marching band uniforms, and Mr. Kruger would stand up at the front of the bus, and he'd say, "Whatever you do, make sure that you leave your instrument case on the bus, because it will be meeting us at the end of the parade down by Eaton's." And so, you know, yay, woo, we're here. I get off the bus. You know, I've got my case and the trumpet in my case, and so, you know, I I go up to Mr. Kruger and I say, "Sir, I forgot to leave my case on the bus." And of course, he'd play an instrument in the, he'd either play a euphonium or if they needed to have somebody play drums, he'd do whatever. Anyway, he looks at me, and he's in a band uniform too. He looks at me and he just says, "Maize, you dumb shit." And basically it was like, you figure it out,
What did you
and
do?
he was so right. It was, it was like, don't come to me with your problems. I told you what you needed to do. So,
What did you
I
do?
stashed it on a float.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. I found a float and just kind of stash it in there.
On any old float?
I don't remember what float it was. It wasn't Santa's float, but, Santa's sitting in a golf cart with a butt, his beard down. That's what I love about backstage at the Santa Claus Parade. But he was right, and that's, that's a good, I think.
It's a great story.
It's a great story, but it's also, like, pay attention, Andy.
Yeah.
And sometimes I don't pay attention to what's going on. I'm just kind of like, I don't like that. It's like, well, tough. Play it out.
But would some of that also come from your enthusiasm, your over-enthusiasm
A little
for
bit.
things?
A little bit.
Yeah.
And being the youngest of three boys, which
Right.
Josh and I both are, the
Oh,
youngest
yeah.
of three boys, we're both maybe a little bit used to getting our own way at times. So we can be a little bit stubborn, but,
Well, it's nice when you can let go of things. But we were just talking about Desmond's Hip City and compared to this album. But do you remember Desmond's Hip City was 1997, I guess?
Yeah.
Right? And do you remember the reviews and how people took it at the time? Like, how was it received?
I mean, we knew it was a very different record. But you know what what I remember is more friends and peers really reacting positively to it.
Oh, great.
And that was very cool.
Yeah.
That was very, because it was, because Pete Cash had left the band, and it was, we had to reinvent ourselves.
Yeah.
And it was a different band, but the band was so good. Gavin Brown drummed on it, Paul McLeod. They really elevated us. I remember personally feeling like, as a player, just trying to keep up with them. So I actually don't really remember reviews per se. I just remember friends, saying, "Oh, and especially over the course of time, when what was that? That was like our fifth record. So at that point, you're making similar types of records, but it was because it had to be a different record, and I'm sure some people heard it and they said, "Well, this sucks," and I'd want to hear the first record again because that's what I like, and
Right.
which is fine, but I just remember it was friends, peers talking about it and reacting positively
That's
to it.
great. And has that happened with this record too?
it's early days.
Early days?
Yeah, early
Yeah.
days. It's just
Yeah.
no one listens to music anymore.
What? Hang on a second. Do they listen to podcasts?
Our friends are all deaf and not interested anymore in beers.
Aw.
I'm kidding.
Well, I'm going to put all these on my playlist and listen in the car. But would you play this song right now, whatever the cost, acoustically here?
Mm-hmm.
That'd be great.
You said whatever the cost. You say that you never lost. You said whatever the cost. It doesn't matter 'cause you weren't cheating. Ah, da, 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 da. Ah, da, 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 da. Sure-footed and young, rested well hung. I guess it sure must have stung when the party moved on without you.
Well, this song, Whatever the Cost, my impression of it was, perhaps incorrectly, that it's about relationships. It's about doing right by people. That's my interpretation. You may or may not be speaking directly to someone, and you've said it's a stream of consciousness song. But it made me think about relationships and doing right by the people you love. You guys are touring musicians, and you have been for a long time, but you've successfully managed to maintain family lives and relationships and maintain that balance and kept it going. Do you have secrets to how you've done that?
Well, understanding wives, partners, I would say they would get all the credit.
Mm-hmm.
And
your wives?
Kids. Oh, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
You know, also, it's not like we toured a lot like all bands do at the beginning of their time. We don't tour as much now, so it's not, it's very different. But you absolutely have to have someone that can tolerate and indulge you in this kind of job, and not just musicians, you know, athletes that travel a lot or people that are in business. You know, you have to have someone that is willing to put up with it, and I don't think it's for everyone. You know, but I think in our case we've been pretty fortunate that way.
Andy, do you have any secrets to your marital success?
No. No, it's relationships. They have their ups and downs, you know, and
They do.
you never travel together in the same direction at the same time all the time. You know, sometimes you're further apart, sometimes you're close together, but it's the commitment. If you're in it for the long term, you start to understand that.
But you do both have a love of family and home, and aside from being people who'd love to be out on the road, there is that. I find that with a lot of musicians too. A lot of people are homebodies, and they love to be at home even though they have to be on the road all the time. Would that describe either of you?
Mm-hmm. Well, more and more. I like to be home. Yeah, I really like to be home.
Would you say, Josh?
I would say, yeah, although right now I'm kind of a bit nomadic, and I'm kind of enjoying that too.
Oh, are you?
So, but I'm also with my wife, you know, most of the time. So
Yeah.
that feels like home wherever we go. So that's not but you know, that was by choice too. So
Right.
But I would say for sure, like having a home, and even when you're touring, you know, you're a day or a week or whatever away from coming home, that's sort of that destination is sort of just something that you really look forward to, and then you get there, and of course you ruin it by arriving.
Yeah.
But no, I would say that most people that travel a lot do have a sense of that need to arrive at a place that is home.
And we also, I think, are very fortunate in that we both come, I think, from fairly stable families. I think when you're growing up, you take that for granted, and then as you get older and you experience a little more of life, you realize how fortunate you've been, and I think we both appreciate that.
Well, you've got that song from 1995's Road Radio that called "It's a Pity."
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know if it relates to this song, Whatever the Cost, or not. Maybe parts of it do, but it's a classic song of yours, and it speaks cuttingly and frankly about relationships. And the video for that song is also, you know, There's a couple fighting, and Andy, you're like the kind of guru character.
I haven't seen that video in 25 years, Jane. I can't remember.
I just watched it. It's like you're out of the Matrix. You're like,
I can't even remember. Do you remember the video?
Well, I think you're riding topless on a white stallion horse. That's my memory of it.
Okay.
Anyhow, yeah. So the video is very dramatic.
Oh,
it's a couple
wow.
fighting, and I don't know who was in the video. You're in the video. Josh is in the video.
Oh.
Other
Okay.
bandmates, but
Because it's not really about couples fighting. It's kind of more. It's more about the way that humans treat each other.
Yeah.
More about, let's get it together, folks, before we drive off a cliff. And, here we are 25 plus years later, and we're still heading towards the cliff. If anything, things have gotten worse.
You mean in general?
Well, the things we say to each other, certainly on social media, yeah, things have gotten worse. The way people talk to each other.
Do you think there's a decline in civility?
Yeah, absolutely. I find that people say things online that they would never say in person, face to face with somebody.
It's like road rage, when you flip someone off and then all of a sudden you're both stuck at the same stoplight.
Yeah, it's like, oops. Yeah.
Anything else you want to say about this song, whatever the cost? I mean, you talk about it being a stream of consciousness, or...
Maybe it's just more about sort of the cult of celebrity that we find ourselves in as well, about people who are famous for being famous.
Right.
They're not famous for having actually done anything.
Yeah.
They're just famous. They usually have a reality show or whatever it is, and it got to the point where one of those people was elected president of the United States. And so really, I think ultimately that's kind of what it's about.
Yeah, it seems like people are getting fame and reality mixed up.
Yeah.
Or celebrity and reality.
Yeah.
Well, this is our reality show, this podcast. So would you guys play that song we were just talking about? It's a Pity?
Absolutely.
I sure would.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Sometimes with the wisdom of age, the proclamations of our youth can carry even more profound insight. From 1995's Road Radio, the song is It's a Pity. Live off the floor at the Woodshed, Josh Finlayson and Andy Maize.
It's a pity, the things you say about me. It's a pity what you say about yourself. It's a pity that we can't talk this over. It's a pity that we can't work this out. Once we thought we were. Once when we were young. Well, maybe we've wasted all the good years. Or maybe the best are yet to come.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
The album is called Bide Your Time. The band is Skydiggers, and this has been Employee of the Myth. Employee of the Myth is hosted by Jane Gowan and recorded at Blue Rodeo's Woodshed Studio in Toronto, Ontario. The podcast is engineered by Tim Vesely, edited by Jane Gowan, and mixed by Tim Vesely and Jane Gowan. If you enjoyed this conversation, please rate, review, share, subscribe, and play it loud. My name is Joel Stewart. Thanks for listening.
Don't look to me for the answer. I don't know nothing anymore. I'll do my best in the meantime and wonder what it's been for. Je t'aime toujours, mon amour. Je t'aime toujours, mon amour.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. Is that too much?
Was that too insincere?
Too enthusiastic.